Hello and welcome. What we're going to be looking at in this video is we're going to be looking at metaphor and complex themes, and we're going to be looking at basically how these two things go together and how we're able to interpret them. Now, poetry, given the fact that it is a very short form of writing, will have a reliance on metaphor and complex details such as these sorts of things to convey more with less. And that is essentially what a poem is doing. It is condensing language to the extreme. By using complex imagery such as metaphor, it enables the poem to also have an immersive quality as well. It allows you to feel what the poet is feeling and is designed to enchant or challenge its readers. So really what poetry is doing is it's condensing a lot of language into a very tiny little ball, and it's trying to suck you in like it's a little black hole. So really what you get out of it is by looking at it and looking at it closely, is you're basically unwrapping and unparceling all of these complex and expansive metaphors. And you'll see this when you are studying poetry, and I know I see this quite often in my students, is that they'll have thousands of pages of notes on a small little poem. And that's essentially what they're doing, is they're unpackaging, perhaps to an extreme degree in some cases, all of the ideas that are put forward in a poem. And so that's basically what it's doing. And so by unwrapping all of these complex details and metaphors, we're essentially conveying all of these ideas which are being expressed in a very small space. Now, my key pieces of advice for anyone who is stuck on this and is not sure what to do are two things. First of all, keep an open mind. Now, by keeping an open mind, I essentially mean don't look at a statement and go, oh, that means this, and then go, I'm done, I've found out because it means this. Because that may not be your best answer. So always keep an open mind. And second of all, question everything. And do what I just did. Is that the best answer? Is there another way of looking at things? What does this mean? What does that mean? What does this mean? And why does he say this? Why does she say that? All of these different questions should come to your mind, and you start to challenge yourself and start to challenge all these different ideas which are being put forward and go, what is this actually trying to tell me? And by doing that, you're starting to interpret the poem, and you're starting to really understand what metaphor and complex themes actually are. Okay, so let's start by really looking at what metaphor actually and really is. Now, it comes in a variety of different forms. Now, your most basic form is when we have one object standing in for another, as in his arms were tree limbs. So it becomes the other thing. So unlike a simile where you've got it's like a tree limb, his arms were tree limbs. Then you've got a bit more of a developed metaphor, which is an analogy, which basically repeats the metaphor over again, which means that I would be spending time making more sort of statements to say that I'm a tree. Now, obviously, I'm not a tree, but that is what an analogy is doing, is it's making a number of statements which suggests how I'm like a tree by basically giving me tree-like qualities. And finally, an allegory is a metaphor in which a text basically contains an allusion to another idea, and that is it has a double meaning. So by essentially saying that this is going on, I'm really actually trying to refer to something else. Now, probably the most famous example or one of the most famous examples, and particularly those who have read Arthur Miller's The Crucible, will find that that text is an allegory to communism. Now, the text has nothing to do with communism. The text has to do with witch hunting and witch burning. But really what it is an allegory to what was happening at the time, where people were being hunted like witches and burned or arrested and thrown into prison because of the fact that they may have been a communist sympathizer. And so we get these similar sorts of ideas repeating themselves. However, the text which is actually making a statement about communism has absolutely nothing to do with it. And it's able to get away with these ideas because of the fact that it is not mentioning these things directly. And so that's basically the definition of an allegory, is it's referring to something without actually referring to it. And so it's a very clever kind of metaphor, which is basically developing these sorts of ideas on a very grand scale.